Russia has steadily been adding to its gold reserves, and we're speaking about this with Jeff Christian today, Managing Director of CPM Group. Jeff, welcome back.
It's good to be here.
So this news of Russia adding to its gold reserves, they added 21 metric tons about in October for a total now of 1,800 tons. It's tripled the amount, or they've tripled their amount over the past 10 years. A lot of people think this is raising a few eyebrows, and they're wondering, why is Russia, planning and making this move? Is it business as usual for you, or any red flags here?
Funny red flags with Russia, but it's business as usual for Russia. There are short-term issues, by which I mean the last 10 years, and there are long-term issues. If you look at the long-term issues, when the Soviet Union dissolved in 1991, it had an estimated 65 million ounces of gold in government stocks. And a lot of that gold disappeared. It didn't really disappear, it went into other parts of the government than the central bank. And then in the first period, 10 years of the post-Soviet Russia, you saw a lot of that gold actually be sold off by people for the government and in inappropriate ways. So by 1996, 1997, the Ministry of Finance and the Kremlin were extremely upset that they had very little gold left in their government reserves compared to what they had at the end of the Soviet era. They wanted to rebuild their inventories, and they said, we want to rebuild our government stocks of gold as well as other assets too. But 1997 to 2005, they didn't have the foreign exchange and they didn't have the capital inflows that they needed to convert money to gold. As the oil price and palladium price and nickel price and everything started rising in 2005 going forward, all of a sudden the Russian government and the Russian economy had a massive inflow of US dollars because all of that stuff was paid for with US dollars. So then they had the wherewithal to start rebuilding the gold reserves that had been depleted in the immediate post-Soviet era. And in addition to that, they had this massive inflow of dollars at a time when the US government was increasingly hostile toward the Russian government. And so they had a shorter term, if you will, 10-year period of time where they were saying, as we get all these dollars in, our exposure to the US dollar rises, and the dollar is the currency that is issued by a country that clearly has a stated problem with the Russian government, so let us diversify away from dollars. And in fact, that ties into our long-term post-Soviet era objective of trying to rebuild our gold reserves. So I look at the increase in gold reserves in Russia since 2005 as just business as normal for Russia. They're finally able to execute on a long-term desire to rebuild their inventories, and in addition to that, they want to diversify away from the dollar.
Right, so they're sending a message to the US though, like that.
They're sending a message the Chinese government sent a message in the first quarter of 2009 when they had the Chinese had bought a lot of gold that was supposed to go to the China Investment Corp, the sovereign wealth fund that was created in December 2007. And instead, the government said, let's add this to monetary reserves to send a message to the US Treasury that we can, in fact, diversify our monetary reserves. So there are messages that are very clear, not only from Russia and China, but from the rest of the world, that there's a great dissatisfaction with the monetary hegemony that the United States has exercised since World War II, and that we will move towards some sort of post-Bretton Woods fixed floating exchange rate program at some point in the future. And so, yeah, there are political messages there, but the real message is a monetary message, which is that governments want to diversify their monetary reserves.
Speaking about monetary policy, let's look here in the U.S. with Yellen on her way out and Powell coming in. Can we expect drastic changes, or?
I think the choice of Powell is a message to financial markets that it's business as usual at the Fed, and that the Trump administration has some awareness of the negative attitudes that most people have toward it in the world, so that they are not touching the Fed at this time.